In the harsh wilderness of 1887 Arizona Territory, 12-year-old Apache boy Naiche lives peacefully with his mother, Lozen, a respected tracker and healer in their small band. When 8-year-old white settler's daughter Emily Hartley goes missing in a snowstorm, the townspeople organize search parties but refuse help from the Apache, whom they distrust. Lozen, knowing the mountains better than anyone and unable to bear the thought of a child dying alone, defies both her tribe's warnings and the settlers' hostility to search for Emily. She takes Naiche with her, teaching him the ancient ways of tracking while racing against time and a brutal winter storm. When an avalanche strikes during their search, Lozen pushes Naiche to safety, but becomes trapped herself. With her final words, she makes Naiche promise to find the girl. Now orphaned and alone, Naiche must choose between returning to safety or honoring his mother's dying wish to save a child whose people have shown nothing but hatred toward his own. The rifle shot cracked through the morning air like thunder, sending a flock of ravens scattering from the pine trees. 12-year-old Naiche pressed himself flat against the cold earth, his heart hammering as he watched his mother, Lozen, slowly rise from their hiding spot behind the boulder. "Stay down," she whispered in Apache, her weathered hand gently pressing his shoulder. But Naiche could see what she saw, a lone white man on horseback, his rifle pointed skyward, firing again. Not at them. A signal. The man's horse stamped nervously in the snow, steam rising from its nostrils. Even from their position 50 yards away, hidden among the rocks and juniper bushes, Naiche could see the desperation in the rider's movements. The man fired once more, then wheeled his horse around, scanning the horizon with frantic eyes. "Something is wrong," Lozen murmured, her dark eyes narrowing as she studied the settler. She had the gift of reading people, their fears, their intentions, like tracks in the snow. It was what made her the finest tracker in their band, even better than the men, though they would never admit it aloud. "We should go, mother," Naiche urged, tugging at her deerskin dress. "Remember what happened to Uncle Victoria when he tried to help them." Lozen's jaw tightened at the mention of her brother, killed 3 summers ago by the very people he'd attempted to aid during a drought. But something in the white man's posture, the way his shoulders shook, not from cold, but from something deeper, held her attention. The rider suddenly spurred his horse toward the Apache reservation boundary, marked by a line of wooden posts that might as well have been a wall between 2 worlds. He stopped just short of crossing, removing his hat despite the bitter wind. "Please," he called out in broken Apache, then switched to English. "Please, I know you're out there. I need help. My daughter, she's missing." Naiche felt his mother's body tense beside him. A missing child. In this weather, with snow already beginning to fall in thick, heavy flakes, a child wouldn't last the night. "How old?" Lozen called out, rising to her full height, ignoring Naiche's urgent grip on her arm. The man's head snapped toward their position, relief flooding his gaunt features. "8. She's only 8 years old. Emily. Her name is Emily. She wandered off yesterday afternoon, chasing her dog near Skeleton Canyon. We've searched everywhere, but the storm," his voice cracked. "The white men have their own trackers," Lozen said carefully, stepping into view. Naiche reluctantly followed, his hand instinctively moving to the small knife at his belt. Not that it would do much good against a rifle. They gave up when the snow started. The man, amid shame coloring his words, said it was too dangerous, that she was probably already. He couldn't finish. "But I heard about you. They say you found the Mexican trader's son last spring when everyone else said he was dead." "That was different," Lozen replied. "The Mexicans trade with us. Your people—" "I know what my people have done," the man interrupted, his voice raw. "I know what they think of you, but you're a mother, aren't you?" His eyes flickered to Naiche. "You understand, please. I'll give you anything. My horse, my rifle, money. I do not want your things," Lozen said quietly. She stood still for a long moment, her face unreadable as snowflakes caught in her long black hair. Naiche knew that look. She was listening to something beyond ordinary hearing. The spirit voices, she claimed, spoke to her in moments of decision. "Mother, no," Naiche whispered urgently. "The elders will be furious. And if something happens to the girl while we're searching, they'll blame us. They always blame us." But Lozen was already moving. Her decision made. "Go back to your town," she told the man. "Tell them nothing of this meeting. If your people know we're searching, they might interfere, and interference could cost your daughter's life." The man's eyes filled with tears. He was too exhausted to hide. "Thank you, thank you. Her mother died last winter from fever. She's all I have." "Go," Lozen said firmly. "Every moment talking is a moment lost." As the rider galloped away, Naiche turned to his mother in disbelief. "Why? Why would you risk everything for them?" Lozen knelt in the snow, placing her hands on her son's shoulders. Her eyes, usually so stern and watchful, softened. "Because a child is a child, Naiche. Apache, white, Mexican. The cold doesn't care, the mountains don't care, and neither should we. This is what makes us human. Father would say it makes us weak." "Your father is dead," Lozen said bluntly, though not unkindly. "Killed in a raid 2 winters ago, fighting the very hatred that would let a child die because of the color of her skin. I won't let that hatred claim another innocent life." She stood, already reading the signs in the landscape, the direction of the wind, the pattern of the snowfall, the lay of the land towards Skeleton Canyon. "Besides," she added with a slight smile, "I have you with me. You've learned well these past seasons. This will be your first real test." "A test?" Naiche's voice cracked slightly, betraying his youth. "Every Apache must learn to track in the worst conditions. Today you learn to track, not for hunting, not for war, but for life. There is no greater honor." They returned quickly to their wickiup, where Lozen gathered her supplies with practiced efficiency. Dried meat, water gourds, extra blankets, her medicine bundle, and most importantly, her tracking kit, strips of cloth for marking trails, a torch for night searching, and the sacred cornmeal for prayers. She painted 2 white lines across Naiche's cheeks with ash mixed with bear fat, protection against the cold and evil spirits. "Tell no one where we're going," she instructed as she worked. "If grandfather asks, we're checking the eastern trap lines. You want me to lie to the chief? I want you to protect our mission." Lozen corrected. "Sometimes the greatest courage isn't in fighting, but in doing what's right, even when your own people would stop you." As they set out into the gathering storm, Naiche looked back at their camp one last time. Smoke rose from the other wickiups, families safe and warm inside. He pulled his rabbit fur cloak tighter and followed his mother's steady footsteps into the white wilderness. The journey to Skeleton Canyon normally took 3 hours in good weather. In the building blizzard, it would take twice that if they could make it at all. The wind howled like a living thing, driving ice crystals into their face. Naiche's eyes watered, freezing tears to his cheeks before they could fall. But Lozen moved like the storm was an old friend, reading signs invisible to Naiche, a broken twig here, a disturbed stone there, the faint impression of what might have been a small footprint already half filled with snow. "Look," she said, pointing to a scraggly juniper tree. Caught on one of its lower branches was a tiny piece of blue fabric. "Your eyes must see what others miss. What does this tell you?" Naiche studied the cloth, its position, the height of the branch. "She's small, even for 8. She passed this way yesterday afternoon, before the worst of the snow. She was running. The fabric is torn, not snag. Good. What else?" "She was chasing something. The dog the man mentioned. See? Paw prints. Very faint, leading that way." Lozen nodded approvingly. "You have your grandmother's eyes. She could track a ghost through solid rock." They pressed on, the trail leading them deeper into the canyon. The walls rose on either side, providing some shelter from the wind, but creating a funnel that could become a death trap if the snow continued to accumulate. Naiche noticed his mother's increasing urgency, though she tried to hide it. "Mother," he said, having to shout over the wind, "the trail is getting colder. What if—" "No, Lozen said firmly. "We don't speak of failure. Words have power, especially in places like this. The canyon is listening." As if in response, they heard it faint, almost lost in the howling wind, but unmistakable. A dog, barking. Lozen's eyes lit up. She found shelter. Smart girl. They scrambled over increasingly treacherous terrain, following the barking until they reached a section where the canyon wall had partially collapsed years ago, creating a series of caves and overhangs. The barking was coming from somewhere within the rock fall. "Emily," Lozen called out in English. "Emily Hartley, we're here to help." The barking stopped. Then, barely audible, a small voice. "Help, please someone help." The relief that flooded through Naiche was immediately replaced by dread. As he surveyed the cave entrance, it was partially blocked by fallen rocks, with barely enough space for a child to have squeezed through. But worse, he could hear the ominous creaking of stressed stone above. The entire formation was unstable. "We have to be very careful," Lozen warned. "One wrong move could bring it all down." She began carefully removing the smaller rocks, each movement deliberate and precise. Naiche helped, his smaller hands able to reach spaces hers couldn't. As they worked, Lozen called out reassurances to the girl. "Emily, my name is Lozen. I'm here with my son, Naiche. We're going to get you out, but you must stay very still. Can you do that?" "Yes," came the trembling reply, "but Patches is hurt. My dog, he protected me from something in the night. A big cat, I think. He's bleeding." Lozen and Naiche exchanged glances. A mountain lion, the dog had probably saved the girl's life. Finally, they created an opening large enough for Naiche to squeeze through. Inside, he found a small blonde girl, huddled against the back wall, clutching an injured collie. Both were covered in dirt and dried blood, but alive. The girl's blue eyes, wide with fear and exhaustion, fixed on Naiche's painted face. "Don't be afraid," he said in careful English, remembering the words his mother had taught him. "I'm here to help." "You're Indian," Emily said, not accusingly but with wonder. "Papa said Indians were dangerous, but he also said you might be the only ones who could find me." "Your papa is smart, man," Naiche replied, gently taking the injured dog while helping Emily toward the entrance. "My mother is the best tracker. She found you." As they emerged from the cave, Lozen immediately wrapped Emily in a blanket and began checking her for injuries. The girl had some frostbite on her fingers and toes, but nothing life-threatening. The dog was worse off, with deep claw marks along his side. "We need to move," Lozen said, looking at the darkening sky. "The storm is getting worse. We'll have to take them to the old shepherd's shelter on the eastern ridge. It's closer than town or our camp." The journey to the shelter was a nightmare of wind and snow. Lozen carried Emily on her back while Naiche struggled with the injured dog. More than once they had to stop and huddle together for warmth, sharing what little food and water they had. When they finally reached the abandoned shelter, a small stone structure built into the hillside, they were all near exhaustion. Lozen immediately set about building a fire with the dry wood stored inside, while Naiche tended to the dog's wounds with the medicines from his mother's bundle. "You know healing?" Emily asked, watching him work with fascination. "My mother teaches me," Naiche replied, carefully cleaning the deep scratches. "She says every Apache must know how to heal as well as hunt." Emily was quiet for a moment, then said, "My mama knew healing too. She was a nurse before she married Papa. She died trying to help others during the fever outbreak." "Your mother was brave," Lozen said, joining them by the fire. "Like you, not many children could survive a night alone with a mountain lion nearby." "Patches saved me," Emily said, tears finally starting to fall. "Is he going to be okay?" "He'll have scars," Lozen said honestly, But he'll live. Scars are just stories written on our bodies. They show we survived. As the night deepened and the storm raged outside, they huddled together for warmth. Emily, exhausted from her ordeal, fell asleep between Lozen and Naiche, her small hand clutching Lozen's dress. The dog, bandaged and resting, lay across their feet. She trusts us, Naiche whispered in Apache, amazed. Children know truth better than adults, Lozen replied. They haven't learned to hate yet, but even as she spoke, Naiche saw worry in his mother's eyes. The storm showed no signs of breaking, and they were running low on wood for the fire. Worse, he could hear a new sound above the wind, the groaning of overstressed timber in the shelter's old roof beams. Sleep, Lozen told him. I'll keep watch. But Naiche couldn't sleep. He watched his mother's profile in the firelight, saw how she gently stroked Emily's hair when the girl whimpered in her dreams, how she carefully tended the fire to make their meager wood supply last. This was the same woman who had watched her husband die, who had seen her people forced onto smaller and smaller pieces of land, who had every reason to let bitterness consume her heart. Yet here she was, risking everything for a settler's child. Mother, he whispered, what will happen when we take her back? Lozen was quiet for so long he thought she hadn't heard. Then she said, I don't know. Perhaps they'll thank us. Perhaps they'll accuse us of taking her in the first place. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that she lives, even if it costs us. Especially then, Lozen said. That's what makes us different from them. Naiche, we choose compassion even when it's dangerous. That's our strength, not our weakness. The wind suddenly gusted harder, and they heard an ominous crack from above. One of the roof beams had split. Snow began falling through the new gap, hissing as it hit the fire. We need to shore it up, Lozen said, urgently, but as she stood, they heard another sound. Voices outside, barely audible above the storm. Naiche's hand went to his knife. Had the settlers followed them? Had they decided the Apache had kidnapped the girl after all? The voices grew louder, and Naiche could make out Apache words. His relief was short-lived when he recognized his grandfather's commanding tone. Chief Cochise himself had come looking for them. Stay with the girl, Lozen whispered to Naiche, then stepped outside into the howling storm. Through a crack in the wooden door, Naiche watched as three figures materialized from the white darkness. His grandfather, tall and imposing despite his 60 winters, flanked by two warriors, Dathaya and Karuk. All three had rifles, and their faces were grim. Lozen, Chief Cochise said, his voice carrying despite the wind. You have brought shame upon us. I have saved a child, Lozen replied, standing straight despite her exhaustion. A white child, the daughter of our enemies. Cochise's weathered face was hard as granite. Do you know what you've done? Their soldiers are gathering. They think we've taken her. They're preparing to attack our camp at dawn. Naiche's blood ran cold. Behind him, Emily stirred in her sleep, murmuring something about her papa. Then I'll return her now, Lozen said. They'll see an Apache with their missing child and shoot first. Dathaya interrupted, his scarred face twisted with anger. You've doomed us all with your foolishness. What would you have me do? Lozen challenged. Let her die. Yes, Karuk spat. How many of our children have they let die? How many? A sharp crack from above interrupted him. The damaged roof beam split further, and a large section of roofing began to collapse. Without thinking, Naiche threw himself over Emily, shielding her from the falling debris. Wood and snow crashed down around them, and he felt something sharp rake across his back. Naiche, Lozen rushed inside, followed by the others. In the chaos, Emily woke, screaming in terror as she saw the Apache warriors looming over her. Patches, despite his injuries, struggled to his feet, growling weakly. Don't hurt her, Naiche gasped, still covering the girl with his body. Blood seeped through his torn shirt, where the debris had cut him. Chief Cochise stared at his grandson, protecting the white child with his own body, and something in his expression shifted. You are hurt. It's nothing, grandfather, Naiche said, though he winced as he moved. Emily, trembling, looked between them all. Then, surprising everyone, she spoke in halting Apache, words she must have picked up from listening to Lozen and Naiche. Please, no fight. Naiche, friend. The warriors exchanged shocked glances. Naiche lowered his rifle slightly. Lozen quickly moved to tend Naiche's wounds, while Chief Cochise studied the small white girl who clung to his grandson's hand. You speak our language, little, Emily said in Apache, then switched to English. They taught me. They saved me. Please don't be angry with them. Grandfather, Naiche said, gritting his teeth as his mother cleaned his cuts. She would have died. Mother did what was right. Right? Cochise's voice was tired now. Older. Your mother did what her heart demanded. But hearts don't stop bullets. He was quiet for a moment, then made a decision. We cannot stay here. The shelter is compromised. Dakia, Kuruk, help them. We returned to camp. But Chief, Kuruk protested. Would you have us be like them? Cochise asked sharply. Would you have us leave children to die in storms? Then we become the monsters they say we are. They fashioned a makeshift stretcher for Emily and the dog from blankets and branches. The journey back to the Apache camp was treacherous, the storm seeming to fight them every step. Naiche, despite his injuries, insisted on helping carry one end of the stretcher. You're brave, Emily whispered to him during a brief rest. No, Naiche replied. Just doing what my mother taught me. They reached the Apache camp as the first gray light of dawn began to filter through the storm clouds. The snow had finally stopped, but the damage was done. Nearly 2 feet had fallen overnight. The camp was in chaos. Warriors were preparing weapons, women were packing essentials, and children were being gathered together. Everyone stopped when they saw the group returning with the white child. Have you lost your mind, Lozen? An elder woman, Yuen, demanded. The soldiers will come regardless, Lozen said. At least now we have something to bargain with. Bargain? Yuen's voice was bitter. You mean a hostage? No, Emily cried out, understanding the tone, if not all the words. They saved me. These are good people. But her protests were drowned out by the sound of horses, many horses, approaching from the east. The soldiers had arrived earlier than expected. Battle positions, Chief Cochise commanded, but Lozen grabbed his arm. No. Let me talk to them. They want the girl. I'll return her, explain what happened. They won't listen. Her father will. Lozen was already moving, carrying Emily despite the girl's protests that she could walk. Naiche followed, ignoring his grandfather's sharp command to stay back. They met the soldiers at the camp's edge, 20 mounted cavalry, rifles drawn, led by a captain with cold blue eyes, and Emily's father, Thomas Hartley, who looked haggard with worry. Papa, Emily cried, reaching for him. Stop right there, the captain barked. Release the child and step back, or we open fire. Captain Morrison, please, Thomas began, but the officer cut him off. These savages took your daughter, Hartley. Don't let sentiment. They saved me. Emily shouted. The lady and the boy, Lozen and Naiche, they found me in a cave. I would have died. She's been traumatized, Morrison said dismissively. Probably threatened. Thomas Hartley dismounted, ignoring the captain's protests, and ran to his daughter. Lozen gently handed Emily to him, and the man fell to his knees, sobbing as he held his child. Look, Emily said, pulling her father's face up. Look at the boy. He got hurt protecting me when the roof fell. And Lozen, she gave me her own food, her own blanket. They saved Patches too. Thomas looked at Naiche, saw the blood on his shirt, the exhaustion in his young face. Then he looked at Lozen, who stood quietly, ready for whatever came next. Is this true? He asked. You risked your lives for my Emily. A child is a child, Lozen said simply. Thomas stood slowly, Emily in his arms. He faced Captain Morrison. These people saved my daughter. We're leaving. Mr. Hartley, you're emotional. These Indians are dangerous. The only danger here is you, Captain. Thomas said firmly. Lower your weapons or I'll report to the territorial governor that you threatened the people who rescued my child. Morrison's face reddened. "You're making a mistake, Hartley. These savages are more civilized than you," Thomas interrupted. He turned to Lozen in a gesture that shocked everyone, removed his hat and bowed slightly. "Thank you. I'm sorry for what my people have done. For what they wanted to do today." Lozen nodded, but before she could speak, one of the soldiers, young, nervous, trigger-happy, saw Dakia moving in the camp behind them. Thinking it was an ambush, he fired. The shot went wide, but it sparked instant chaos. Warriors raised their weapons, soldiers swung their rifles around, and for a terrible moment, it seemed a massacre was inevitable. "Stop!" Emily's voice rang out with surprising authority for a child. She wriggled out of her father's arms and ran between the two groups. Arms spread wide. "Stop it, no shooting." "Please." Naiche didn't think. He ran after her, standing beside her, his arms also spread. "She's right, no more killing." The sight of the two children, Apache boy and white girl, standing together between the armed groups, created a moment of stunned silence. Lozen stepped forward to join them. "My son bleeds from protecting your daughter," she called to the soldiers. "Your daughter stands with my son to protect us. Can you not see? They shame us all with their courage." Thomas Hartley moved to stand with the children as well. "Captain Morrison, order your men to lower their weapons, now." The captain's jaw clenched, but he was outmaneuvered. "Stand down," he barked. Slowly, reluctantly, both sides lowered their weapons. "We should go," Thomas said, lifting Emily again. But she struggled in his arms. "Wait, I need to say goodbye properly." She ran to Naiche, and to everyone's amazement, hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're my friend forever." Naiche, embarrassed but touched, hugged her back briefly. "Stay safe, Emily." She then went to Lozen and took her hand. "Thank you for finding me, for everything." Lozen knelt down to the girl's level. "You have a brave spirit, little one. Never lose it." As the soldiers prepared to leave, Thomas Hartley approached Lozen one more time. "If you ever need anything, food, medicine, protection, send word. I owe you a debt I can never repay." "You owe us nothing," Lozen said. "But if you want to honor what happened here, teach your daughter to see people, not colors. Teach her what she learned in that cave, that kindness exists everywhere, if we allow it." Thomas nodded, his eyes glistening. "I will. I promise." As the soldiers rode away, Emily turned in her father's saddle, waving until they disappeared over the ridge. The Apache camp was quiet for a long moment, everyone processing what had just occurred. Then Guyan spat on the ground. "Fools, they'll be back." "They always come back." "Perhaps," Chief Kachi said thoughtfully, his hand on Naiche's shoulder. "But today, something different happened. Today, children showed us another way." He looked at his grandson. "You acted with honor, Naiche. Your father would be proud." "He acted like his mother," Lozen said, pride evident in her voice. But even as the camp slowly returned to normal activities, Naiche noticed the worried looks, the whispered conversations. Many felt Lozen had endangered them all. Some thought she'd gone soft, forgotten the crimes committed against their people. That evening, as Lozen treated Naiche's wounds more thoroughly in their wiki-up, she was unusually quiet. "Mother," Naiche said, "are you troubled?" "I'm thinking about Emily," she admitted, "about what waits for her. Her father loves her. She's safe now. Is she?" Lozen's voice was sad. "She showed compassion to us today. How long before her people teach her to forget? How long before they convince her that what she experienced wasn't real, that we're the enemies they want us to be?" "She won't forget," Naiche said firmly. "I saw her eyes. She won't forget us." Lozen smiled, ruffling his hair. "When did you become so wise? I learned from you." A commotion outside interrupted them. Dakia entered their wiki-up without ceremony, his face grave. "Lozen, the council is meeting. They want to discuss your actions." The tribal council was held in the largest wiki-up, with all the elders and senior warriors present. Chief Kachi's presided, but it was clear he was conflicted between his role as chief and his love for his daughter. Lozen, began Elder Nana, his ancient voice carrying the weight of decades of suffering. You acted without consulting us. You put our entire band at risk for an enemy child. I acted as my conscience demanded, Lozen replied, standing tall before them. Your conscience? Kuruk scoffed. Your conscience nearly started a war today. A war that's been brewing regardless, Lozen countered. At least now one white family knows we're not the monsters they paint us as. One family, Guryan said bitterly. Against hundreds who want us dead. Change starts with one, Lozen insisted. One child who will grow up knowing the truth. One father who will speak differently of us. One story that contradicts their hate. Pretty words, Elder Nana said. But words don't stop bullets. Your husband learned that. The mention of her dead husband made Lozen's eyes flash. My husband died fighting. I choose to live, saving. Which brings more honor to our people. You think yourself better than us? Dekir demanded. I think myself tired of death, Lozen said quietly. Tired of hate, breeding more hate. If that makes me weak in your eyes, so be it. Chief Kuchis raised his hand for silence. Lozen acted from compassion. But compassion without wisdom can be dangerous. The question before us is what happens now. The whites won't forget this, Elder Nana warned. That Captain Morrison, he'll make trouble. He wanted a fight today. Then we should move the camp, someone suggested. Go deeper into the mountains. Run again? A younger warrior protested. Always we run. The debate continued late into the night, voices rising and falling like the wind outside. Naiche, listening from just outside the wickiup, despite being told to leave, heard his mother defending her actions again and again, heard the fear and anger in the others' voices. Finally, Chief Kuchis made his decision. We stay for now, but Lozen, you will not leave the camp without permission. Your tracking days are suspended until the council decides otherwise. Naiche saw his mother's shoulders slump slightly. Tracking was her life, her purpose, but she bowed her head in acceptance. As the council dispersed, Naiche overheard Dekir mutter to Kuruk. This isn't over. That white captain will return. And when Apache blood spills, it will be on Lozen's hands. That night, as they lay in their wickiup, Naiche asked, Do you regret it, mother? Saving Emily. Lozen was quiet for a long moment. Ask me when you have children of your own, Naiche. Ask me if you could let any child die when you had the power to save them. The others are angry. The others are afraid. Fear makes people cruel, makes them forget who they are. She turned to face him in the darkness. Promise me something, my son. What, mother? Promise me that no matter what happens, you'll remember what you felt in that cave, the need to protect someone weaker, even if they're different. Promise me you'll choose compassion, even when it's dangerous. I promise, Naiche said, though something in his mother's tone made him uneasy. 3 days passed in tense normalcy. Lozen obeyed the council's restrictions, staying within the camp, teaching the children, helping with daily tasks. But Naiche her constantly scanning the horizon, reading signs in the flight of birds, the behavior of the horses. On the 4th day, her vigilance proved justified. It started with smoke on the southern horizon, not cook fire smoke, but the black, oily smoke of burning wickiups. A rider came galloping into camp, his horse lathered with sweat. The southern band, he gasped. Soldiers attacked at dawn. They're dead, all of them. Men, women, children. The camp erupted in cries of grief and rage. The southern band had been their relatives, friends. 30 souls gone. Captain Morrison, the rider continued. He led them. Said it was retaliation for kidnapping the white girl. Said all Apache would pay until the guilty were surrendered. All eyes turned to Lozen. Dekir stepped forward, his face twisted with fury. You see what your compassion has brought? Morrison would have found another excuse, Lozen said, but her voice was hollow with shock. But he used this one. Gu Xiong screamed. My sister was in that camp. My sister's children. The crowd was turning ugly, grief transforming into rage that needed a target. Naiche moved closer to his mother, his hand on his knife, though he knew it would be useless against so many. Enough. Chief Koshizu's voice cut through the chaos. We mourn our dead. We prepare for war, but we do not turn on each other. She brought this on us. Someone shouted. Morrison brought this on us. Koshiz roared back. White hatred brought this on us. Not one woman trying to save a child, but even Kosh's authority couldn't fully quell the anger. That night, Naiche woke to find his mother sitting by the dying fire, tears streaming down her face, the first time he'd ever seen her cry. Mother, 30 people, Naiche. 30 people dead, because I saved one child. No, Naiche said firmly. 30 people dead, because whites choose murder. You didn't pull those triggers, but I gave them the excuse. They never needed an excuse before. Lozen looked at her son, saw the premature wisdom that their hard life had forced upon him. You're right, but being right doesn't bring back the dead. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Thomas Hartley arrived with Emily, accompanied by 2 other settlers, but no soldiers. The Apache warriors immediately surrounded them, weapons drawn. Please, Thomas called out. We've come to warn you. Morrison is gathering a larger force. He plans to attack this camp tomorrow night. Why would you warn us? Chief Koshiz demanded, stepping forward. Because what Morrison did to the southern band was murder, Thomas said, his voice shaking with anger. Because my daughter hasn't stopped crying since she heard. Because it's wrong, all of it. Emily slipped down from the horse before anyone could stop her and ran through the line of warriors. Where's Naiche? Where's Lozen? The warriors were too stunned to stop her. She found them emerging from their wickiup and threw herself at Lozen, sobbing. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Those people died because of me. Lozen knelt and held the crying child. No, little one, they died because of hatred. Never blame yourself for the evil others choose. Thomas Hartley addressed Koshiz. I've brought you the patrol schedules, the number of men Morrison has. Some of us don't agree with what he's doing. We're trying to stop him through legal channels, but law means nothing when it comes to Apache lives, Koshiz finished bitterly. I'm trying to change that, Thomas said. There are others like me, people who believe this madness has to stop. But for now, you need to move your camp. Tonight, the Apache looked at each other, torn between suspicion and the urgent need to protect their families. It's a trap, Dakia said. They want us to run so they can attack us in the open. It's not a trap, Emily said, her small voice carrying surprising conviction. Papa's telling the truth. Captain Morrison is evil. He laughed when he talked about killing those families. He laughed. Something in the child's horrified innocence convinced them. Koshiz made the decision. We move, now. The camp became a flurry of activity. As they packed, Thomas Hartley approached Lozen. I'm sorry, this is my fault. If I hadn't asked for help. You asked for help for your child, Lozen said. I would do the same again. The fault lies with those who choose violence. Will you ever be safe? Thomas asked, genuine concern in his voice. We're Apache, Lozen said simply. Safety is not our fate, survival is. As the band prepared to move deeper into the mountains, Emily hugged Naiche goodbye again. Will I ever see you again? She asked. Maybe, Naiche said, though he doubted it. In a better world. I'll make it better, Emily said fiercely. When I grow up, I'll make them understand. I'll tell everyone how you saved me, how good you are. Stories change in the telling, Naiche said, wise beyond his years. They'll make you forget. Never, Emily promised. I'll write it down, every detail, so I can never forget, and neither can anyone else. The Apache band moved through the night like ghosts, their decades of forced flight having taught them to disappear into the landscape. Naiche helped his mother pack their medicine bundles, noticed how her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. She hadn't slept properly since saving Emily. They headed northeast, toward the sacred peaks where the winter spirits dwelt. It was dangerous terrain, especially with early winter upon them, but it would be harder for cavalry to follow. The elders rode, while the younger people walked carrying what they could. Naiche saw his grandfather helping an elderly woman onto his own horse, choosing to walk despite his age. "Your grandfather is a great man," Lozen said quietly, noticing his gaze. "He carries the weight of all our people on his shoulders, like you carry the weight of saving that girl." Naiche replied. Lozen was quiet for a moment. "No, my son, I carry the weight of the 30 who died after. That's different." They climbed higher. As dawn approached, the air growing thinner and colder. Some of the youngest children were struggling, and Naiche gave his blanket to a little girl named Ayana, whose lips were turning blue. "You'll freeze," Lozen protested. "I'm strong," Naiche said, though his teeth were already chattering. "Father's blood keeps me warm." It was what his mother always said about him, that he had his father's fire, but Lozen knew better. The boy had her heart, too generous for the harsh world they inhabited. By midday, they reached a temporary camping spot, a cluster of caves hidden behind a frozen waterfall. The band collapsed in exhaustion, but there was no time for proper rest. Scouts had to be posted, supplies distributed, plans. During the hurried meal of dried meat and pine needle tea, a scout named Jaev came running into the camp. Riders approaching, 2 only. They carry a white flag. Weapons were drawn, positions taken, but when the riders came into view, Naiche gasped. It was Emily and her father, and with them, surprisingly, was an older Apache woman. Grandmother Sage, Chief Kushiz, stepped forward in amazement. The elderly woman dismounted with difficulty. She had been living near the white settlement for years, serving as an unofficial translator and healer for both communities, one of the few Apache the whites would tolerate. "Grandson," she said to Kushiz, for she was his aunt, "I bring urgent news," and these two insisted on coming, though I told them it was foolish. Emily immediately looked for Naiche and Lozen, relief flooding her face when she spotted them. But she stayed by her father, sensing the tension. "Split Kushi's command. Morrison has split his force," Grandmother Sage reported. "Half pursue you directly. The other half circles north to cut off your escape. They know these mountains better than we hoped." "How many men?" Dakia demanded. 40 in total, armed with new rifles from Fort Grant." A murmur of despair rippled through the band. 40 soldiers against their 15 warriors, plus women and children to protect. "There's more," Thomas Hartley said, stepping forward nervously. "Morrison has something else. Dynamite. He plans to seal you in if you take refuge in caves." "Dynamite?" Lozen's face paled. "He would collapse mountains on children." "He's lost to madness," Thomas said. "The death of the southern band wasn't enough for him. He wants complete extermination. He keeps saying it's God's will. Your God wills the death of children." Ewan spat. "Not my God," Thomas said firmly. Morrison's twisted version. Emily suddenly spoke up. "We came to help. Papa knows a way, a path the soldiers don't know about. Grandmother Sage says it leads to Mexico." "Mexico," Elder Nana mused. 3 days hard travel. If the weather holds." "The weather won't hold," Lozen said, reading the sky. "Another storm coming, bigger than the last. Then we're trapped between soldiers and storm," Kuruk said bitterly. "This is what comes of." "Enough," Kokizi interrupted. "We need solutions, not blame." He turned to Thomas. "This path, why would you help us?" Thomas met his gaze steadily. "Because my daughter would be dead without your people. Because what's happening is wrong. Because if I don't help, I'm no different from Morrison. It could mean your death if the whites discover your betrayal," Kokizi warned. "Then I'll die doing what's right," Thomas said simply. Like Lozen risked everything to save Emily. The parallel wasn't lost on anyone. Here was a white man willing to betray his own people to save Apache lives, just as Lozen had risked her people's safety to save a white child. Papa found an old Spanish map. Emily added eagerly. In our attic. It shows paths from when the Spanish mined these mountains. One goes through Eagle Sorrow Pass. Several Apache exchanged glances. Eagle Sorrow Pass was known to them. It was where, 50 years ago, a band of their ancestors had been cornered and massacred by Spanish soldiers. The place was said to be cursed, haunted by unavenged spirits. That pass is dangerous, Elder Nana said. The rocks are unstable, and in winter it's nearly impassable. Lozen finished, but nearly isn't completely. You know it? Nai asked his mother. I tracked a wounded elk through there once, many winters ago, before you were born. The path is treacherous, but it exists. Then we have our route, Cochise decided. We leave immediately. As the band prepared to move again, Emily approached Naya. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Papa says we have to go back to town after showing you the path. But what if Captain Morrison finds out we help? Your father is brave, Naya said. Like you. I'm not brave. I was so scared in that cave, and when I heard about the Southern band, tears filled her eyes. Those children died because Morrison used me as an excuse. No, Naya said firmly, echoing his mother's words. They died because Morrison chose evil. You chose to warn us, to help us. That's what matters. Emily looked at him with something like wonder. You're 12, right? You sound much older. Apache children grow up fast, Naya said simply. We have to. The journey to Eagle Sorrow Pass was grueling. The old Spanish path was barely visible, often blocked by rockfalls or grown over with thorny brush. Thomas Hartley walked with them, carrying Apache children when they tired, sharing his food. Some of the band began to look at him with less suspicion, though Dakia and his followers remained hostile. As they climbed higher, the temperature dropped dramatically. The storm Lozen had predicted began with light snow, then quickly intensified. Visibility dropped to mere feet-high. We should stop, someone called out. We can't see the path. We can't stop, Lozen shouted back over the wind. Morrison's men have better supplies. They can wait out a storm. We can't. She took the lead then, her tracking skills pushed to their absolute limit, as she found the path more by instinct than sight. Naiche stayed close behind her, marveling at how she seemed to feel the mountain itself, reading signs invisible to everyone else. They were near the narrowest part of the pass when they heard it, a low, ominous rumble from above. Avalanche, someone screamed, but Lozen was already moving, shoving people forward, screaming for them to run. The elderly and children were pushed ahead first, warriors helping them along the treacherous path. Naiche turned to help a struggling elder when he saw Emily had fallen, her ankle twisted. Her father was too far ahead to notice. Without thinking, Naiche ran back, grabbed the girl, and carried her forward. The rumbling grew louder, and when Naiche glanced back, he saw a white wall of death descending the mountainside. His mother appeared beside him, taking Emily from his arms. Run, she commanded, pushing him ahead. They ran, the avalanche roaring behind them like a hungry beast. The pass curved ahead, and if they could just make it around the bend, the rock wall would protect them. Most of the band made it, but as Naiche rounded the corner and turned back, he saw his mother had stopped. 5 people were still trapped on the other side of where the avalanche would hit. Dakia, despite his earlier hostility, had gone back for a fallen child, and 3 others had stopped to help. Lozen looked at her son one last time, their eyes meeting across the impossible distance. Then she ran, not forward to safety, but back toward those who were trapped. Mother, no, Naiche screamed, but his voice was lost in the avalanche's roar. He watched in horror as Lozen reached the trapped group, shoving them toward a small overhang that might provide minimal shelter. She pushed Dakia and the child into the space, then the others. There was no room for her. The avalanche hit with the force of a mountain's fury. Naiche saw his mother raise her arms, not in defense, but in what looked like an embrace, as if welcoming an old friend. Then she was gone, buried under tons of snow and rock. Mother, Naiche tried to run back, but strong hands held him. His grandfather, tears streaming down the old chief's weathered face. She's gone, boy. She's gone. The avalanche passed, leaving deadly silence in its wake. The small overhang had held. Dakia and the others emerged, shaken but alive. But where Lozen had stood, there was only a field of white death. Naiche fell to his knees, his anguished cry echoing off the mountain walls. Emily, limping on her twisted ankle, came to him, wrapping her small arms around him as he sobbed. "She saved them," Emily whispered. "She saved them all." The band stood in shocked silence. Even Dakia, who had criticized Lozen so harshly, looked devastated. The child he held, little Ayana, was crying for the woman who had given her life to save them. Chief Cochise, struggling with his own grief, knew they couldn't stay. "We must keep moving," he said, his voice hollow. "Morrison's men won't stop because of the avalanche. We can't leave her," Naiche protested. "She's with the mountain now," Grandmother Sage said gently. "The mountain she loved, that she could read like no other. This is a warrior's death, child, a hero's death." They resumed their desperate flight, but something had broken in Naiche. He moved mechanically, Emily and her father, staying close, trying to offer comfort he couldn't accept. His mother was gone, the one who had taught him everything, who had shown him that compassion could exist even in their harsh world, gone. As night fell, they finally stopped in a protected valley on the other side of the pass. The storm had passed, leaving crystal-clear skies and bitter cold. Thomas Hartley built a fire, and the band huddled around it, exhausted and grieving. "I should go back," Thomas said quietly to Chief Cochise. "Lead Morrison's men away from you." "That's suicide," Cochise replied. "Perhaps. But your daughter, Lozen, she died saving lives. Maybe I should follow her example." "Papa, no," Emily protested. "We can't lose you too." As they argued, Naiche stood and walked to the edge of the camp, staring back toward the pass. In his hand he clutched his mother's medicine bundle, one of the few things he'd managed to save. He heard footsteps behind him. "Dakia." "Boy," the warrior said roughly, "I was wrong about your mother. She was the best of us." Naiche didn't respond, couldn't respond. "The child she saved," Dakia continued. "Ayana, she would have died without your mother's sacrifice. I would have died." He placed a hand on Naiche's shoulder. "Her spirit lives on in those she saved. In you. She's gone," Naiche said, his voice breaking. "No," Dakia said firmly. "Warriors like her never truly die. They become part of the story, the legend that keeps our people strong. Your mother will be remembered long after Morrison and his hate are dust." That night, as the band tried to rest, Naiche couldn't sleep. He kept seeing his mother's last moment, that strange gesture of embrace, as the avalanche took her. What had she been thinking? What were her last thoughts? Emily, also unable to sleep, came to sit beside him. "My mama died saving others too," she said quietly. "During the fever, she could have stayed away, stayed safe, but she chose to help. Papa says that's the highest form of love, giving your life so others can live. Your mother was white, mine was Apache, but they died the same way," Naiche said, a bitter laugh escaping him. "Maybe that's what my mother meant. We're all the same in the end." "Will you hate us now?" Emily asked, fear in her voice. "White people, I mean. Because of what Morrison did." Naiche was quiet for a long time. Then he remembered his mother's words. Her last lesson: "Promise me you'll choose compassion, even when it's dangerous." "No," he said finally. "Mother wouldn't want that. She died saving Dakia, who had been cruel to her. She would say hate is poison. It kills the one carrying it." The next morning brought new danger. Scouts reported Morrison's northern force had found their trail and was less than 3 hours behind. The southern force had been delayed by the avalanche, but was finding another route. "We can't outrun them," Chief Cochise said grimly. "Not with children and elders." "Then we make a stand," Kuruk suggested. "Where?" "We're in open ground now." Thomas Hartley studied the Spanish map. "There's something here, a symbol. Looks like old ruins. Spanish mission maybe. 2 miles east. The Weeping Stones. Elder, Nana said, recognizing the location. Yes, ruins are there. Walls still stand. Walls we can defend. Cochise decided. We go there. The weeping stones turned out to be the remains of an old Spanish mission, abandoned for a century. Its stone walls were partially collapsed, but still offered protection. The band quickly took positions, warriors, at the walls, women and children, in the most protected areas. You should go now, Cochise told Thomas and Emily. Before Morrison arrives, you've done enough. I'm not leaving, Thomas said firmly. These children, all of them, deserve protection. Papa, Emily said, I want to go home. I know, sweetheart, but sometimes we have to stand for what's right, even when we're afraid. As they prepared for siege, Naiche found himself positioned next to his grandfather. The old chief looked older than ever, aged by the loss of his daughter. She should have been chief after me, Cochise said quietly. She had the wisdom, the vision. Now that falls to you one day. I'm not ready, Naiche said. No one ever is, but you have her spirit, her compassion. That's what our people need. Not just warriors, but healers. Not just fighters, but bridges. The sound of horses announced Morrison's arrival. The captain rode at the head of 20 men, his uniform crisp, despite days in the field. He stopped just out of rifle range. Cochise, he called out, surrender, and I promise quick deaths for the warriors. The women and children will be taken to the reservation. Your promises are worthless. Cochise called back. You murdered the southern band after they surrendered. They were savages, Morrison replied coldly, as are all of you, but I'm feeling merciful. Send out the white man and child you've kidnapped, and I might reconsider. Thomas stood up on the wall, making himself visible. I'm not kidnapped, Morrison. I'm here by choice. Morrison's face darkened. Traitor, you'll hang alongside them. Then I'll die with honor, Thomas replied. Which is more than you'll do. Morrison turned to his men. Prepare to attack. No survivors except the traitor and his daughter. I want them alive to stand trial. But before the attack could begin, another group of riders appeared on the horizon. Not soldiers, civilians. As they drew closer, Naiche recognized several townspeople, including the minister, the school teacher, and surprisingly, the town judge. Judge William Brennan, a man in his 60s with silver hair and a reputation for fairness that made him unpopular with many settlers, rode forward with his hands raised peacefully. Captain Morrison, the judge called out, stand down your men. Judge Brennan, this is military business, Morrison replied curtly. You have no authority here. I have a federal warrant that says otherwise, Brennan replied, pulling a document from his coat. For your arrest, Captain. Mass murder of civilians at the southern Apache camp. Morrison lied coldly. You can't arrest me for killing hostiles. Women and children aren't hostiles, the minister, Reverend Cole, spoke up, his voice shaking with anger. What you did was butchery, not warfare. They're all the same, Morrison spat. Savages who saved my daughter, Thomas Hartley interrupted, still standing on the wall. Judge, Emily was rescued by these people. The woman who saved her died yesterday in an avalanche, giving her life to save others. The school teacher, Miss Catherine Wells, a young woman who had recently arrived from Boston, gasped. The Apache woman died. Lozen. Everyone turned to stare at her. You knew her? Thomas asked, surprised. She came to town sometimes, trading herbs for supplies. Miss Wells explained. She taught me which plants could help with my students' ailments when the doctor was drunk. She was kind. She was Apache, Morrison said, as if that negated everything else. Captain Morrison, Judge Brennan said firmly, you will stand down or I'll have you removed from command. You and what army? Morrison sneered. My men follow me, not some Apache-loving judge. But when Morrison turned to his men, he saw uncertainty in their faces. Some had participated in the massacre of the Southern Band and were haunted by what they'd done. Others were newer recruits, uncomfortable with attacking women and children. A young lieutenant named Patterson spoke up. Captain, if there's a federal warrant— Shut up, Patterson, Morrison snapped. He turned back to the ruins. You have 1 hour to surrender, or we attack. Inside the ruins, Chief Cochise gathered his people. We have little ammunition, less food, but we have truth on our side. Truth doesn't stop bullets, Karuk said grimly. No, but it might stop soldiers, Cochise replied, looking at the townspeople who had come. These whites came to stop Morrison. Perhaps there's hope yet. Naiche found himself standing next to Emily, both children facing the possibility of death. Are you afraid? Emily asked. Yes, Naiche admitted, but Mother would say fear keeps us alert. I miss her, Emily said suddenly. I only knew her for a short time, but I miss her. She would have liked hearing that, Naiche said, his throat tight. Outside, tension was building between Morrison's men and the townspeople. Miss Wells had dismounted and was walking toward the ruins, ignoring Morrison's orders to stop. Miss Wells, Morrison shouted, "Get back here!" She turned to face him, her young face set with determination. "No, if you're going to murder these people, you'll have to murder me too." "And me," Reverend Cole said, dismounting to join her. "This is insane," Morrison raged. "They're savages. The only savage here is you," Judge Brennan said coldly. "Lieutenant Patterson, as the next ranking officer, I'm ordering you to arrest Captain Morrison for war crimes." Patterson hesitated, torn between duty to his commander and the legal authority of a federal judge. It was then that Grandmother Sage, the elderly Apache woman who had lived between both worlds, spoke up. "I have something to say," she announced, her voice carrying despite her age. "I have lived 80 winters. I have seen much death, much hatred, but I have also seen moments of grace." She walked slowly between the two groups, neither fully Apache nor fully white in their eyes, but belonging to both. "Yesterday," she continued, "an Apache woman died saving her people, including those who had scorned her for saving a white child. That white child stands there, Ray." She pointed to Emily, ready to die beside the Apache boy who protected her. "A white man stands with Apache warriors, and Apache warriors prepare to die protecting white citizens who came to help. Can you not see? The Creator is showing us a different way." Her words hung in the cold morning air. Some of Morrison's men lowered their weapons, moved by the old woman's testimony, but Morrison himself was beyond reach. "Enough of this nonsense." He raised his rifle, aiming at Grandmother Sage. The shot that rang out didn't come from Morrison's gun. Lieutenant Patterson had drawn his pistol and shot the rifle from Morrison's hands. The captain clutched his bleeding hand, staring in shock at his subordinate. "Captain Morrison," Patterson said formally, "you are under arrest for the murder of civilians and conduct unbecoming an officer." "You can't do this," Morrison screamed. "They're animals, all of them." "No," Patterson said quietly. "You are." As soldiers moved to restrain Morrison, chaos briefly erupted. A few men loyal to Morrison raised their weapons, but the majority sided with Patterson. Within moments it was over. Morrison was in chains, ranting and cursing. Chief Cochise slowly emerged from the ruins, his hands empty of weapons. "Lieutenant Patterson," he said carefully. "What happens now?" Patterson looked uncomfortable. I don't know." "The judge?" Judge Brennan stepped forward. "The Apache will return to their reservation. No charges will be filed for fleeing, given the circumstances. Captain Morrison will stand trial for murder, and justice will be served," Cochise asked skeptically. "I'll make sure of it," Brennan promised. "What he did to the Southern Band was unconscionable." "What about us?" Thomas Hartley asked, his arm around Emily. "We helped them flee. You helped prevent more bloodshed," Judge Brennan replied. "No charges will be filed." As the two groups began to separate, Emily broke free from her father and ran to Naiche. "Will I see you again?" Naiche looked at his grandfather, who nodded slightly. "Perhaps. When the world is ready." "I'll make them ready," Emily promised. "I'll tell everyone about your mother, about all of you. Stories change in the telling." Naiche repeated his earlier warning. "Not this one," Emily said fiercely. "I won't let it." She hugged him tightly, then ran back to her father. As the Apache prepared to return to their reservation and the whites to their town, Miss Wells approached Chief Cochise. "I want to help," she said. "I want to teach at the reservation school, to bridge our peoples." Cochise studied her for a long moment. "You would be welcome, but it won't be easy. Many of my people will distrust you." "Lozen trusted me enough to teach me," Miss Wells replied. "I owe it to her memory to try." As the groups finally parted, Naiche looked back one last time at the pass where his mother had died. The morning sun was hitting the snow, making it sparkle like diamonds. "She's not really gone," Dakia said, coming to stand beside him. "Every time we choose mercy over revenge, compassion over hatred, she lives." 3 months passed. The reservation was bleak. Less land than they needed, poor soil, limited game, but they survived, as they always had. Miss Wells had indeed come to teach, and despite initial suspicion, some children began attending her school. Naiche was among them, hungry for knowledge, for understanding the wider world his mother had glimpsed. Captain Morrison's trial had caused a sensation. For the first time, a military officer was being tried for crimes against Apache civilians. The testimony was damning. Soldiers who had participated in the massacre broke down, describing what they'd been ordered to do. Thomas and Emily Hartley testified about Lozen's sacrifice, about the humanity of the Apache people. But Naiche knew better than to hope for true justice. The world didn't change overnight. One day, as spring began to touch the desert, a package arrived for Naiche through Miss Wells. Inside was a leather journal and a letter in a child's careful handwriting. "Dear Naiche, I promised I would write it all down so I would never forget. This journal has the whole story, how your mother found me, how she saved me, how she died for others. I write in it every day so the details stay fresh." Papa says Captain Morrison was found guilty but only sentenced to 5 years in prison. It's not enough, but it's something. Some people are angry about even that much. They say no white man should be punished for killing Apaches, but others are starting to listen, starting to understand. Miss Wells sends letters about your school. She says you're the best student, that you're learning to read and write faster than anyone. Your mother would be proud. I dream about her sometimes. In my dreams, she's not dead. She's part of the mountain, watching over everyone, Apache and white alike. Papa says that's childish, but I think it's true. I'm sending you something else with this letter. Papa, help me make it. Your friend forever, Emily. At the bottom of the package was a small wooden box. Inside, cushioned in cloth, was a silver locket. Naiche opened it to find 2 tiny photographs, one of his mother, taken by a traveling photographer who had visited the reservation years ago, and one of Emily. On the back of the locket was engraved, "Compassion is the bridge between worlds, Lozen." Naiche held the locket, tears streaming down his face. His grandfather found him there, crying over the gift. "She was right, your mother," Koshia said softly. "Change starts with one person, one act of kindness. That little white girl will grow up different because of what Lozen did. She'll teach her children, and they'll teach theirs. But mother won't see it," Naiche said bitterly. "Won't she?" Koshia asked, gesturing to the journal, the locket, the letters from Miss Wells about the slowly improving relations between the reservation and the town. Every kindness that grows from her sacrifice, isn't that Lozen living on? A year passed. The reservation struggled, but small improvements came. Miss Wells's school grew. Some townspeople began trading fairly with the Apache. Judge Brennan pushed through legislation, providing better supplies. It wasn't enough, not nearly, but it was movement. On the anniversary of Lozen's death, something unexpected happened. A group of townspeople arrived at the reservation, led by Thomas and Emily Hartley. With them were 20 others, including Reverend Cole, Miss Wells, and even Lieutenant Patterson, who had left the military. "We want to hold a memorial," Thomas explained to Chief Cochise, "for Lozen and all who died in the violence. Together." The Apache were stunned. Never had whites offered to formally mourn their dead. "Why?" Dakia asked suspiciously. "Because they deserve to be remembered," Emily said, now 9 years old but with eyes that had seen too much. because pretending they didn't matter is another form of killing them. The memorial was held at sunset, on a hill overlooking both the reservation and the distant town. Apache and White stood together, awkward but present. Reverend Cole spoke of sacrifice. Chief Cochise spoke of hope. Miss Wells read the names of all who had died, Apache and White alike. When it came time for Naiche to speak, he stood silent for a moment, looking at the mixed crowd faces that would have been enemies a year ago, now standing together. "My mother," he began, his voice strong despite his youth, "believed we are all related. The Apache say we are all relatives, about our tribe, but she believed it about everyone. She died proving it, saving people who had scorned her, because she saw them as family too." He paused, looking directly at Emily and her father. "She would not want us to mourn forever. She would want us to build, to create a world where Apache and White children can be friends without fear, where compassion isn't dangerous." "But that world seems so far away," someone called out. "Every journey begins with one step," Naiche replied. "My mother took that step when she saved Emily. Emily's father took that step when he warned us. Each person here took that step by coming today. The journey is long, but we've begun." Old grandmother Sage, now even more frail, stood with difficulty. "I have lived long enough to see enemies become friends, friends become enemies, and everything switch again. But this," she gestured to the mixed gathering, "this is new. This is what Lozen died for, not just to save bodies, but to save souls from the poison of hatred." As the sun set, painting the sky in reds and purples, the two communities stood together in silence. It was fragile, this peace, like ice over deep water. But it existed. 5 years passed. Naiche grew into a young man, educated in both Apache traditions and White learning. He became a translator, a bridge between worlds, carrying his mother's legacy in every word he helped others understand. Emily grew too, fierce and determined. At 14 she published her journal as a book, The Apache Who Saved Me, a true story of love beyond prejudice. It caused controversy, but it also opened minds. The reservation still struggled, injustices still occurred, but something had fundamentally shifted. Where once there had been only hatred, now there were pockets of understanding. Where once violence had been the only answer, now sometimes, just sometimes, people chose dialogue. Naiche often returned to Eagle's Sorrow Pass, where his mother had died. The avalanche field had become a meadow, wildflowers growing from the disturbed soil, life from death, beauty from tragedy. On one such visit, he found he wasn't alone. Emily was there, now a young woman, having ridden from town alone despite the distance. "I come here sometimes," she said, "to talk to her. Is that silly?" "No," Naiche replied. "I do the same." They stood together, Apache and White, united by loss and love. "She saved more than just those people in the avalanche," Emily said. "She saved the future. Every friendship between our peoples, every moment of understanding, it grows from her sacrifice." "She would say she just did what was right," Naiche replied. "Maybe that's the point," Emily suggested. "Maybe doing what's right, even when it costs everything, is what changes the world." As they stood there, a golden eagle circled overhead, a sign in Apache tradition of a warrior spirit watching over the living. "Do you think she knows?" Emily asked. "How much changed because of her?" Naiche touched the locket he still wore, containing his mother's photograph. "She knows. Every act of kindness, every bridge built between our peoples, that's her knowing." The sun was setting as they prepared to leave. Emily mounted her horse, then turned back. "Naiche, I'm going east next month, to study at a college that accepts women. I'm going to become a lawyer." "A lawyer?" Naiche was surprised. "Someone needs to fight for justice in the courts, not just with words but with laws. I want to be that person, for your people, for all people who are treated unjustly. Because of my mother, because of your mother," Emily confirmed. "She showed me that courage isn't about not being afraid, it's about doing what's right." despite the fear. As she rode away, Naiche remained at the pass. The wind picked up, and for a moment, just a moment, he could swear he heard his mother's voice in it. "Compassion, my son, always choose compassion." 10 more years passed. The world changed slowly, too slowly, but it changed. Naiche became a respected leader, eventually taking his grandfather's place as chief. He led with his mother's wisdom, choosing negotiation over violence, understanding over hatred. Emily returned from the East as a lawyer, one of the first women to practice in the territory. She fought for Apache rights in court, winning small victories that accumulated into larger changes. She never married, dedicating her life to the cause Lozen had died for, the belief that all people were truly related. On the 20th anniversary of Lozen's death, a monument was erected at Eagle Sorrow Pass. It was controversial. Many whites opposed. Honoring an Apache, many Apache opposed accepting white recognition, but it stood nonetheless. A simple stone marker, with words in both Apache and English. Here gave her life Lozen, mother, tracker, bridge between worlds. She saved without regard to race. She loved without regard to difference. May her sacrifice remind us we are all relatives. At the dedication, hundreds gathered, Apache and white, Mexican, and Chinese laborers from the railroads, former slaves seeking new lives in the West. It was a crowd Lozen could never have imagined, but would have loved. Naiche, now 32 and chief of his band, spoke last. His hair was beginning to gray early, marked by the responsibilities he carried. Emily stood nearby, her law degree having helped secure official recognition for the monument. "My mother," Naiche began, his voice carrying across the crowd, died believing something most thought impossible, that enemies could become family, that hatred could transform into love, that one act of compassion could ripple across generations. Naiche paused in his speech, looking at the diverse crowd gathered at the monument. His eyes found Emily, now 34, her blonde hair touched with premature silver from years of fighting exhausting legal battles. She nodded encouragingly. 20 years ago, he continued, my mother made a choice that many called foolish. She saved a white child when Apache children were being left to die. She was scorned by some of her own people, threatened by whites, yet she persisted. Today, that child stands among us as a woman who has dedicated her life to justice for all people. Emily stepped forward holding a worn leather journal, the same one she had started writing in as a child. "I want to read something," she said, her voice clear but emotional. "The last entry I wrote before Lozen died." She opened the journal, its pages yellow with age. "The Apache woman looks at me like my own mother did, like I matter, like I'm worth saving even though I'm different. She gave me her food when she was hungry, her blanket when she was cold. The boy, Naiche, protects me even though his people have every reason to hate mine. I don't understand how they can be so kind when we've been so cruel." Emily's voice broke slightly. She closed the journal and looked at the crowd. "I was 8 years old when I wrote that. Now, as an adult, I still don't fully understand that level of compassion, but I've spent my life trying to live up to it." An old Apache woman in the crowd called out, "Words are easy. What has really changed?" It was Goyen, now ancient, the same woman who had blamed Lozen for the massacre. Emily turned to her. "You're right to be skeptical. Change has been slow, painful, insufficient, but..." She pulled out a document. "Last week, the federal court ruled in favor of water rights for the Apache reservation, the first such ruling in history. Your grandchildren will have water for their crops." And the school, Miss Wells, now in her 50s, added, "We have 40 Apache children learning alongside 20 white children. They're growing up as friends, not enemies." "It's not enough," Goyen said, but her voice had softened. "It will never bring back the dead." "No," Naiche agreed. "But my mother would say the dead are honored when the living choose peace." As the formal ceremony ended and people began to mingle, Naiche noticed a young Apache boy, perhaps 12, standing apart from the crowd, anger clearly in his face. He approached the child. "You're angry," Naiche observed. "They killed my father," the boy spat. "White soldiers. 2 years ago. And you want me to stand here and pretend we're friends? Naiche knelt beside the boy, remembering himself at that age. What's your name? Taza. Taza, I'm not asking you to forget your father or forgive his killers. I'm asking you to consider this. My mother died saving Apache lives, including Dakia, who had been cruel to her. She also saved a white child. That child grew up to fight for our water rights. Your crops will grow because my mother saved someone who should have been an enemy. She was a fool, Taza said, though with less conviction. Perhaps, Naiche said, but her foolishness has brought more change than decades of fighting. An elderly white man approached them, Thomas Hartley, now grey and weathered, walking with a cane. Chief Naiche, he said formally, then looked at the boy. Young man, what's your name? Taza glared at him silently. His name is Taza, Naiche said. His father was killed by soldiers. Thomas's face fell. I'm sorry, son. Truly sorry. There's no excuse for what's been done to your people. Your apologies mean nothing, Taza said. You're right, Thomas, Sip simply. They don't. But maybe this will. He pulled out a photograph, old, faded. It showed Lozen holding a young Emily, with Naiche standing beside them. This was taken by a traveling photographer, the day before she died. Look at their faces. Despite himself, Taza looked. In the photograph, Lozen was smiling, a rare capture of joy. Emily was gazing at her with complete trust. Naiche looked proud, protective. That's what's possible, Thomas said. Not forgetting the past, but building a different future. As the day wore on, people shared stories. Dakia, now a grandfather himself, told of how Lozen had saved him, despite his cruelty to her. Miss Wells spoke of Apache children who had become teachers themselves. Lieutenant Patterson, long retired, described the moment he chose justice over orders. But the most powerful moment came when a young woman approached Naiche, half Apache, half white, perhaps 20 years old. Chief Naiche, she said nervously, my name is Mary Sullivan. My mother was Apache, my father white. They met because of the school Miss Wells started. They faced hatred from both communities, but they loved each other. They named me Mary Lozen Sullivan, after your mother. Naiche felt tears sting his eyes. She would be honored. There are 12 of us now, Mary continued. Mixed families, children who belong to both worlds. We exist because your mother started something. A sunset approached, painting Eagle's Sorrow Pass in golden light. Emily found Naiche standing alone at the monument. You're thinking of her, she said. Always, Naiche replied, wondering what she would make of all this. She would be proud. You've become everything she hoped. A leader, a peacemaker, a bridge. Some days I feel like I'm failing her, Naiche admitted. Progress is so slow. For every step forward, we take 2 back. Emily was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? The night before the avalanche, when we were in that shelter, your mother told me something. She said change isn't like a river, flowing steadily forward. It's like raindrops here and there, seeming to make no difference. But over time, those drops carve canyons. She said that. She did. And then she said something else. She said her greatest hope wasn't that the world would change in her lifetime, but that you, specifically you, Naiche, would live to see a better world. Naiche turned away, overcome with emotion. She saw it, you know. Emily continued. In that last moment, before the avalanche, I was watching her face. She wasn't afraid. She looked satisfied, like she knew her sacrifice would mean something. They stood together as darkness began to fall, the first stars appearing. The crowd had thinned, but some remained, small groups of Apache and whites, talking, sharing food, their children playing together. Look, Emily pointed to where Taza, the angry boy from earlier, was listening intently to Thomas Hartley, telling a story. Another drop of rain. Later that night, at the Apache reservation, Naiche sat in his wickiup, holding his mother's medicine bundle. Inside, along with the sacred items, was something new, a letter Emily had given him privately. It was dated just days ago. Dear Naiche, I've been diagnosed with consumption. The doctor says I have perhaps a year. I'm not afraid. I've lived the life I promised your mother I would, fighting for justice, building bridges, refusing to let hatred win. But before I go, I needed you to know something. Your mother didn't just save my life that day in the cave. She saved my soul. She showed me that love transcends difference, that courage means standing for others, that one person can change the world by changing hearts. I'm leaving my entire estate to fund a school, the Lozen Memorial Academy, where Apache and white children will learn together, where your mother's story will be taught, where every child will learn what she knew. We are all relatives. Thank you, my brother, for your friendship. Thank you for continuing your mother's work. When my time comes, I'll face it like she did, knowing the ripples of our choices extend far beyond our lives. With love and respect, Emily Naiche clutched the letter, tears flowing freely. Outside, he heard children laughing, Apache children playing with white children who had stayed after the ceremony. Their parents watched nervously but allowed it. A year later, Emily passed peacefully, surrounded by friends from both communities. Her funeral was the largest the territory had ever seen, Apache ceremonies blending with Christian ones, tears shed by people who 20 years ago would have killed each other. Naiche spoke at her grave. Emily Hartley was 8 years old when my mother found her in a cave, nearly dead. She could have grown up bitter, traumatized, fearful. Instead, she chose to honor her rescue by rescuing others, through law, through education, through love. She was my sister, not by blood but by choice. The Lozen Memorial Academy opened that fall. On the first day, 50 children attended. Apache, white, Mexican, Chinese. Above the door was carved in 4 languages, "We are all relatives." Naiche, now 40, stood before the students. "Children, you're here because 2 women, one Apache, one white, believed in a better world. They paid for that belief with their lives. Your job is to make their sacrifice worthwhile." A small Apache girl raised her hand. "Mr. Naiche, my grandmother says whites can never be trusted." A white boy added, "My pa says the same about Apache." Naiche smiled sadly. "Your elders carry wounds that may never heal, but you have a choice. You can inherit their hatred, or you can build something new." He pulled out the loose photograph Thomas Hartley had shown Taza, Lozen, Emily, and himself, frozen in a moment of pure connection. "This is what's possible," he said. "It's not easy. It requires courage your elders may not understand. But it's real." As years passed, the academy grew. Its graduates became teachers, lawyers, doctors, leaders. They married across racial lines, raised children who saw themselves as simply human. It wasn't paradise. Prejudice persisted. Violence occasionally erupted. Injustices continued. But something had fundamentally shifted. On his deathbed, at 70, Chief Cochise called for his grandson. Naiche, now 50, sat beside the ancient chief. "I was wrong," Cochise whispered. "When Lozen saved that white child, I thought her foolish, but she saw what I couldn't, that the future required new ways. Grandfather, listen, you've led our people well, better than I did. You fought with laws instead of arrows, with education instead of raids. Some call you weak for it. I know, they're wrong. It takes more courage to build than to destroy. Your mother knew that." Cochise gripped his grandson's hand. "I go to join her now. Tell her, I understand." Chief Cochise passed that night, the last of the great war chiefs. His funeral brought thousands, Apache and white, Mexican and Chinese, former soldiers and former warriors. They mourned not just a chief, but an era. Naiche became the official chief of multiple Apache bands, recognized by both his people and the government. He used his position to secure better land, more resources, proper schools. It was never enough, but it was progress. At 60, Naiche returned once more to Eagle Sorrow Pass. The monument to his mother had been expanded into a peace garden where people of all backgrounds came to reflect. He was surprised to find someone already there. Taza, now a man of 40, a teacher at the Lozen Academy. Chief Taza said respectfully. Just Naiche here, he replied. You come here often? When I need to remember, Taza said. That boy you met 30 years ago, so full of anger, he needed to learn what your mother knew. And what's that? That hatred is a prison we build for ourselves. That compassion is the key. Taza paused. My son is marrying a white woman next month. 30 years ago, I would have killed any white person I met. Now I'm gaining a daughter. They stood in comfortable silence, watching eagles circle overhead. Do you think she knew? Taza asked. Your mother, do you think she knew how much would change? Naiche thought of his mother's last moment, that gesture of embrace as the avalanche came. She knew that saving one life was worth dying for. Whether that life was Apache or white, didn't matter to her. The rest, all this change, this progress, I think she hoped for it, but didn't require it. The saving itself was enough. As Naiche aged, he wrote his mother's story, Emily's story, the story of how enemies became family. It spread across the country, inspiring others to bridge their own divides. On his 70th birthday, Naiche stood before a crowd at the Lozen Academy's graduation. His hair was white, his face deeply lined, but his eyes remained bright. 50 years ago, he told the graduates, my mother died saving lives. She was called a fool, a traitor, a hero, a saint. She was none of these, and all of these. She was simply a woman who chose love over hate, compassion over revenge. He looked at the faces before him, every color, every background united in their education and friendship. Each of you has that same choice. Every day, in small ways and large, you choose whether to build walls or bridges, whether to heal or wound. I'm an old man, know my time is ending, but looking at you I have hope. A young woman, Apache and white, Chinese and Mexican, a mixture that would have been impossible 50 years ago, stood up. Chief Naiche, how do we honor their sacrifice? How do we live up to what Lozen and Emily died for? Naiche smiled, remembering his mother's words. By choosing compassion, even when it's dangerous. By seeing people, not colors. By remembering that we are all relatives. That night, in his wiki-up, Naiche held his mother's medicine bundle one last time. Inside, he placed Emily's journal, the photograph of them all together, and a new addition, a list of every mixed marriage, every integrated family, every life saved by the changes his mother's sacrifice had sparked. The list was long. Mother, he whispered to the night, your ripples have become waves. He passed peacefully in his sleep, the medicine bundle clutched to his chest. His funeral was unlike anything the territory had ever seen. Thousands came, so many that they covered the entire valley. Apache ceremonies blended with Christian prayers, Jewish blessings, Buddhist chants. Children who had never known a world without integration wept for the man who had made their world possible. But the most moving moment came when an ancient woman was helped to the podium. It was Ayana, 90 years old. The child Lozen had died, saving in the avalanche. I've lived a long life, she said, her voice still strong. I've had children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I've been a teacher, a healer, a grandmother to many. None of it would have existed without Lozen's sacrifice. She pulled out something, a worn piece of blue fabric, the same that had been caught on the juniper tree when Emily was lost. This scrap of cloth started everything. A lost white child, an Apache woman's compassion, an avalanche, a sacrifice. From tragedy came transformation. She looked at the crowd, thousands of faces representing the future Lozen had died to create. We gather today not in grief, but in gratitude for Lozen, who showed us compassion, knows no boundaries. For Emily, who proved change is possible. For Naiche, who built the bridge his mother envisioned. And for all of you, who must now carry their legacy forward. As the ceremony ended and people began to disperse, they noticed something. Children, Apache, white, mixed, had gathered at the monument. They were holding hands, forming a circle that grew larger as more joined. Without prompting, they began to sing, a song taught at the Lozen Academy, words in Apache and English, about how all people are connected, how every act of kindness creates another, how love transcends difference. Their voices rose into the evening sky, where eagles circled in the fading light. The adults watched in wonder as their children who existed because of one woman's refusal to let a stranger's child die, sang of unity, of hope, of a future where compassion wasn't dangerous but natural. And in that moment, everyone understood. Lozen hadn't just saved Emily in that cave. She had saved the future itself, showing that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in conquest or division, but in the simple revolutionary act of seeing everyone as family. The song continued as darkness fell, voices joining from every part of the crowd, old and young, Apache and white, all united in a harmony that would have seemed impossible when a desperate father fired his rifle into the winter sky, seeking help for his lost daughter. But it wasn't impossible. It was real. It was here. It was Lozen's true monument, not stone and words, but living, breathing proof that love is stronger than hate, that compassion can change the world, that we are truly all relatives. As the last note faded and the crowd slowly dispersed, many felt they heard something in the wind, a whisper, perhaps, or just imagination. But those who listened closely could swear they heard a woman's voice, strong and gentle. Choose compassion even when it's dangerous. And in their hearts, each person there made that choice. The ripples continue still.